What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic. And today we're getting into slasher territory. Yesterday I just put up a Fear Street review, and today we're going to learn it's hell of a summer ahead of us. I don't know why these movies released in the spring, like Snack Shack last year released in the spring, even though it was clearly a summer movie. It's almost like they're admitting the fact that they know that they're not going to play well in theaters and that they need to be on streaming / video on demand in time for the summer. But is that true? I think a lot of like American Pie played over the summer. Have we just completely shifted to where like teens and young adults just don't go to the theaters over the summer? Is that the thing that we're trying to just wave the white flag and just give up on? Neon's releasing this. It actually premiered at the 2023 Toronto Film Festival and has been gestating until now. Always a great sign. It is co-written by Finn Wolfhard and also produced, which is kind of what gives the film a little bit of a profile, so to speak. And Fred Heschinger, who is definitely been getting more and more and more roles thrown his way. One of those like sort of steamrolling into stardom type people, like another Jacob Elordi. He's popping up in everything. He's basically the star here. He plays Jason because when we were at a camp, we need a Jason. So, click like and subscribe, and I promise we're going to talk about Hell of a Summer, which I'm super stoked to talk about, clearly, which you can tell from my tone, my tone of voice. There are films in this genre that I like, and I think what's interesting is how often we see things by release date. And if I had seen this in theaters, I would have seen this before Fear Street, and actually probably even before I watched Hard Eyes. But after having watched those two, now I'm seeing sort of the other side of it, which is sort of a tame, less mean, trying to be a horror comedy. Like all these films are sort of like in this weird genre where they really want to be considered horror comedies or something, but they're not really. They don't quite fit into the genre that they're trying to claim that they're a part of. Hell of a Summer, Finn Wolfhard cited sort of a whole bunch of coming of age movies as being like his points of reference, which is probably why this film is not really crafted very well to be a slasher, because he's not really influenced by slashers. So he made a film that would have much been better suited as sort of like a Gen Z Wet Hot American Summer than it would have been served as a Friday the 13th, inspired by. But it's basically this group of camp counselors shows up at a camp, and there's a killer who's going to slowly kill them off one by one. Most of them off screen, not really gory. And that's that. There was one creative death, and we didn't even really see it. We just kind of saw like the aftermath of it and like the leading up to it. And I don't know, it just wasn't really. I thought the thing with the peanut butter could have been maybe funny, for a film that's leaning sort of horror comedy. I was like, oh, well, this could be kind of a funny death, I guess, making fun of peanut allergies. Smother him in peanut butter or something, and then send him back to his friends. No, they just kind of cut away. A lot of the deaths cut away. We have even like an opening kill sequence where two people die, but like one of them, we cut away from them and then come back, and the other person finds them. It's one of those things, and they're like, "Oh no, oh there's a killer. Oh, I have to run." And it's like, well, there's one missed. So it's like the opposite of it's like I kind of like I'm on the be careful what you wish for, because I complain about sort of the meanness behind Hard Eyes and Fear Street, which both are, I think, far gorier than necessary for what it is they're trying to do, especially Hard Eyes, which is really trying to nail the horror comedy thing. It's very mean spirited horror. Like, it doesn't really fit with the tone of the movie. Um, and Fear Street is just way gorier than most slasher movies where a killer would just kind of walk along with a knife and just stab somebody. It has some pretty brutal, horrific kills in it. This kind of has the opposite where some kids just die. I'm not even sure we saw everybody die. I'm not even sure at the end of the movie who did. I don't know who died. Like I feel like I'm trying to like take stock of who's still alive. I think I know who's still alive, but it's totally possible somebody else could have been and we just kind of lost track of them. We just haven't found their body yet. It's not one of those that could be like bleeding out somewhere. Um, so the problem is that I think Finn, who he co-wrote this with a friend who was also in the Ghostbusters movies with him, who is listed as the technical director, Billy Brick. I don't know who he is. Uh, he's also in the movie. Um, their characters don't make nearly as much of an impact as Fred Heshinger does. Fred is the centerpiece of the movie and the most enigmatic of them because he's not really a part of the group, which they constantly remind him of because he's like slightly older. And by slightly, I mean 24. And they keep wondering why he keeps coming back as a camp counselor when he's so much older. And it's so funny when you think about things as an adult as like age relativity, and you're like, these kids are probably like 18, 19, maybe 20, and this 24-year-old is like radically older than them. I don't even think you would notice most of the time. It's just, if you're socially awkward, you're just going to remain socially awkward. And he's kind of socially awkward, and that's kind of why he stands out. It has really nothing to do with his age. Like, if he just was cool, or if this had been cast, if you'd taken this role and flipped it to where the 24-year-old was like the hottest girl on camp, like nobody would even say, they wouldn't even think twice. They wouldn't even comment on her age. There would just be a whole bunch of boys going, oh my God. That would be the movie. So it's not a wide enough age gap for people to be like, why are you here? You're 45. you know, shouldn't you be running this camp, like owning it or something? They didn't push it far enough away for me to actually believe that that's such like an insurmountable age gap between these characters. Um, so, I mean, if these are middle schoolers, fine, but they're not. These characters are not middle schoolers either. So it's well cast. I didn't hate any of the actors. It's not the best script. We have a couple of people who are really written hard into archetypes. Like the theater kid is really the theater kid. There's the sort of trippy vegan girl who's really sort of the trippy vegan girl. Like, everybody just kind of falls into a mold like they do in most horror movies. It doesn't really have much to say or offer to the genre. It's also not really discernibly bad. It's not, there's some stuff here that suggests that if these two had written a different film that was coming of age and not heavily influenced by horror, I know Finn thinks he's like a Scream King because he's coming up through It and Stranger Things and Ghostbusters. So somehow that gives him some sort of clout in this genre. I think he would have been way better suited just doing something that related to him. Maybe something like a Kings of Summer. I feel like that's where that's where everything, that Snack Shack would have been like right up these guys' alley, because the best stuff that works here are the little moments between these kids trying to figure out what they want to do not just for the summer, but maybe for the rest of their lives, the kind of relationships that they're building, the non-horror elements, the things that have absolutely nothing to do with the slasher. The comedy elements of it are not really strong. They kind of just happen occasionally organically, but have very little to do with the slasher. It's more of like the presence of a killer causes some funny moments, but the kill sequences themselves are not uniquely funny. Sometimes there are movies that have kill sequences where each one is sort of inherently funny in and of itself. And that's what makes it a horror comedy, is because of the setup. Sometimes it's the characters, and then the deaths are still brutal. I would say Shaun of the Dead maintains to be mostly hilarious in terms of its cast and its choices and directorial style. But when you get right down to the deaths, I don't think too many of the deaths were really like, haha, that was funny, you know? But there are other films where it is. I guess kind of a spoiler, but I would point to, um, without giving context, so just in case. I mean, it's been out for a while, Cabin in the Woods, but the the motorcycle jump, it's funny. It just is, you know. Tucker and Dale has a lot of them. Tucker and Dale has a lot of like really silly, stupid kill sequences where like the guy trips and falls into the wood chipper. Like that's objectively funny and has very little to do with it doesn't like step out of its thing. It doesn't feel necessarily mean spirited. I mean, it's gory. It's a horrible way to go, but it's not really, you know, uh, it helps support the tone of the movie. Here, the tone is sort of the killer is not really doing anything, and the killer reveal is, oh my god, nothing. Uh, like the least impactful killer reveal I think I've seen in a slasher movie. I did not care. um, Talk about a character with less motivation, uh, and just sort of like a retread of things we've seen before and not even trying to avoid it. It's almost like they couldn't come up with a reason for there to be a killer, so they literally just copied Scream. And they were like, fame. Why are we not famous? I wanted to be famous. I hate that. It's just like, we've done this before. Scream did it multiple times. So, uh, there's paying homage, and then there's just sort of feeling like you had nowhere else to go and didn't know where to go. And then you kind of go, well, why was this the movie? What compelled you to make this your big debut? What was it about needing to make a slasher instead of just a regular camp movie? You know, just like a regular teens at camp doing their thing. Why is like Theater Camp came out a couple of years ago. That did fine. People kind of like that. Like there's a space for those kind of movies. I don't think the killer needs to be here at all. I think it'd have been way funnier if like they thought there was a killer, but there never was. Like they just like the whole thing was fake. Um there was a movie that I liked that came out in 2000s that I don't want to again spoil because it literally is the whole movie, is where everybody is trying to convince somebody that there is a killer, and ultimately, of course, the thing leads to somebody actually dying, but it's a whole bunch of misdirect. And I thought it was a good film from the first time I saw it because I thought, wow, this is a different approach. And I think that would have been fine here. It would have been somebody misreading something, and maybe somebody quote unquote went missing, but they didn't really go missing. These kids are just too, whatever, to go looking for them. So, I mean, there's so many options. I just don't think this works as it is, but it's not also inherently a awful movie, but it's also not a good one. It's frustrating. I liked the audio description. Nicole Cyril does the narration here. It's written by Sean Boggs. It's done by Audio Eyes, and her performance of the track is excellent. She's 100% invested in the track. It's very much reminiscent. Like I said, I just saw Fear Street Prom Queen, just put that review up yesterday, and very reminiscent of that. It's somebody who is aware of what it is that they're narrating, and the rise and fall in tension, without doing the screaming thing, which sometimes audio-wise has a tendency to do, which in certain scenes, like they don't have a rise and fall, they just have loud and soft. uh, so I kind of have I have like a spotty relationship with audio-wise, where I think some of the tracks they've done are really good, some of the tracks they've done are, and then they also did In Violent Nature, so which was my least favorite track of 2024. But C'est la vie. They're all over the map. And I think this is definitely one of their stronger tracks. I could have used maybe a little bit more character description, only because the film does such a poor job of establishing people. But I also, it has a more manageable cast too. Like, Fear Street has way too many people in that cast, and almost admittedly so, and characters who just, you forget they even are there. They're impossible to track. This has sort of like a manageable cast, and I didn't quite feel like I knew everyone in the cast. So, or like what their thing was, like what was their little stereotype, archetype thing that they were falling into, or their vibe. So, their look, Um, I think ultimately, despite the fact that it has strong audio description, this film is just lost in terms of a genre. However, I think Finn and Billy as a team, if they can pull out of this genre and write something that isn't horror related, they're not really suited for it. There are people who are just doing this better and who understand the genre better. Just because you get cast in the genre doesn't mean that you understand horror movies. That's just like, that's not true. That's not a falsity. That's a falsity. That's not something that's true. So, like, I don't know that I inherently would think that Jamie Lee Curtis would be great if her directorial debut was a horror movie. I wouldn't be like, oh, that feels like her vibe, just because she was Laurie Strode. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the play here is. I think they're both coming of age, and them writing from their perspective, coming of age, makes sense. And them trying to force 80s slasher horror when neither of them are from the 80s really doesn't make a lot of sense. And it also didn't really seem like they were that interested in doing it. So, all things considered, I have to go slightly negative on Hell of a Summer. I'm going to give it a C minus. It's not a terrible movie. It's not going to be on my bottom worst films of the year list. It's not a complete waste of time. I know horror fans would love to see more of the kills. I would just love to see this film just not be a horror movie. I'm going to go the other direction and say remove the kills basically altogether. If you want to be a horror comedy, I don't even think you need a killer. I just think you need the semblance of a killer. The idea of one, like a ghost story, and then somebody sees something and they keep panicking. And how does Gen Z react to that? That could be inherently funny without there ever being a killer. So, or you could just make it a coming of age movie at a camp. So, but this doesn't work. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I'll see you guys on the other side.